That was the problem of today's interview, that every time we mentioned this wonderful human's name, Alexa Bigwarfe, my Alexa went off.
Well, I just have to say I was so impressed with our
Mhm.
guest today. So I'm thrilled that we get to introduce our entire audience to Alexa Bigwarfe today.
Yeah, she's
I mean,
amazing.
USA Today best-selling author, a publisher, a podcast host. She has the Women in Publishing Summit. I just think that people will enjoy getting to know another author, publisher, hearing her perspective on what it takes to bring your idea forward and really ultimately to succeed, elevating the
Mhm.
voices of women.
And Alexa built her business by her own grit and determination, ingenuity, thinking outside the box. That's what I love. I love to see people do that. I love to see people take their ideas, take that spark, and make it into something tangible and something that thrives.
Well, and I love also the story of the non-traditional start. I just something
Yes.
that generally gets me thinking creatively. I
It
mean,
sounded
of course,
familiar.
out of tragedy, though. I mean, like, the
Oh,
way
yeah,
she
that's
really,
yeah, yeah.
having lost a child and then becoming a bastion of a community because people needed to be talking about their loss and then helping to bring other parents in similar situations, their
Mhm,
stories forward through this kind of collaborative community. Essentially, that's what this woman is all about. She's about helping everyone rise
mhm,
together, creating that tidal movement so
mhm,
that people can succeed. And also coming from that perspective that you don't need to go it alone. You can't really go it alone. You're
mhm,
gonna need support. I mean, these are all the same things that we consistently talk about.
mhm.
So I just love that. I feel like we're talking to a bird of a feather.
She goes from working in one place, but and is met by tragedy, and then finds herself making her pain her purpose. And isn't life so wonderfully delicious and bittersweet and difficult, and just opening our minds to the possibility of what's ahead of us instead of going to on the path that we think that we're supposed to be taking. And I think she was just open to the universe saying, "No, Alexa, you are meant to be this person." I think that was so powerful.
Well, it's an inspiration. It's a story of inspiration. So I love that. And
And
I
you
think our
sing a
audience
little
is
bit.
gonna love it.
You sing a little bit? So, guys, hold on to your hats. Put in your earbuds because Corinna, you're gonna hear her sing today.
Is this becoming a trend now? I mean, we sang Edie Brickell a little bit in the last podcast, and now we're singing.
Oh,
Oh, yeah, it's becoming a
yeah.
trend. This is a thing now.
All right, so let's get on to the episode and let's kick it, Corinna, with Alexa Bigwarfe.
Kick it.
Welcome to the Mediacasters with your business besties, Corinna Bellizzi and Julie Loken. In every episode, you'll get behind-the-scenes access to experts who share their struggles and successes in podcasting, publishing, and presenting. So grab a pen, grab your bestie, and kick it with Corinna and Jules.
This is absolutely the story of my life. I was just at my mom's house last night for dinner, and she asked me a question, and her Alexa started going off. I was like, I cannot believe you have not changed the name. You can change it to Echo or Amazon, but please do not have your Alexa be Alexa.
Sorry, Alexa. So, it's the name when Amazon came out with Alexa, it must have changed your universe. Alexa Bigwarfe. I adore somebody like you with so many moving parts. You have your family, you have your children, which I'm sure, you know, they're your priority, but you're also doing amazing things for authors. You're doing amazing things for authors who probably are just writing books and then don't know what the heck to do or don't know how to start to write a book or have
Mhm.
no idea about the process from A to Z.
All of the above, yes.
All of the above. So, tell us about your journey with writing and how you have felt this calling to reach out to authors of all different kinds, all different ilks, and shake it up a little bit. Give them the tools that they need to do what they need to do.
Yeah, so it's not a happy start to my journey. I never really saw myself falling into this role actually before I left the world of working for other people, which I mean, being employed by someone else, I should say. I'm still working for other people, but before I left that world, I was in counterterrorism and homeland security, so quite a bit of a different
Wait,
world.
counterterrorism, homeland security.
Yes, you heard that right.
Wow, you've got
You're the
stories
second
there.
person I've interviewed that has forged a new path from wanting counterterrorism. So I imagine it's common that people decide they don't want to do that anymore.
Well, I loved my job. I really did. I started as an intelligence officer in the Air Force, and then moved into working for Homeland Security when I left the Air Force. And I loved my job, but what I didn't love was that I could not leave my house without planning an escape route for when the people were going to try and kill me. Like, you just get so in that. Like, I was at a football game, and I'm like, okay, Jeff, my husband at the time, if a bomb goes off or if a plane crashes into us, here's what we're going to do. I don't care what everybody else around us does. This is our plan. And I'm like, I don't want to live this way anymore. Plus, I had two very small children, a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and I was traveling a lot. And it just, so obviously being a stay-at-home mom was going to be so much easier than that job. I
Or
found
so you
quickly
thought.
that that was not the case at
Man,
all.
counterterrorism sounds a little bit easier.
That's what I tell people all the time. I was like, I had no idea, no idea. But anyway, the book stuff started because very shortly after I left working full time, we decided to have my ex-husband and I are both the third of 4 children. So we decided we had to at least have a number three. Well, number three turned into number 3 and 4, which was quite exciting and scary and terrifying. And then our whole
Meeting
worlds just
twins.
yes, and
Mhm.
but, our whole worlds fell apart because when we found out when I was 20 weeks pregnant that they had a syndrome called twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome, which is very,
Oh,
very serious, and, I was hospitalized a bunch. We went through a bunch of procedures to try and save them, and, they were born 9.5 weeks early, and then Catherine, she just had way too much going on, so she passed away after 2 days, and, that in itself is a horrible experience, but I will say that 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 I was reborn through that experience kind of in a way very strange way to put it, but everything that's happened since then is a direct result of that. I
mm.
started blogging about grief and loss and twins and NICU and TTTS and all these types of things. And then after a certain amount of time passed, I wanted to do more. I'd made a lot of connections in the grief community. So I pulled together 33 moms and dads, and we wrote and published Sunshine After the Storm, a survival guide for the grieving mother. And that is when I realized, oh my gosh, publishing, it's a big giant puzzle, kind of like working in intelligence was. And I really loved figuring out all the pieces of the puzzle. So I started doing a few more books and on parenting instead of grief and loss, because I now had 3 small children at home. And after about my second or third book, people started coming to me and saying, how are you doing this? What are you doing? How do I get from idea to book? How do I publish it? How do I get it on Amazon? How do I have it formatted? So I started basically doing some services, and I'll pause for a break here because I've just downloaded a lot of information on you. So you may have questions, or I can just keep talking, whatever, whatever
Well,
works for
I
you.
mean, a non-traditional path to a new career is something that I think many of our audience members can relate to. And in this case, it seems like it kind of fell into your lap, right? Like
Mhm.
you started doing the thing and then you're like, okay, I'm people want help in this. I've figured out how to do it. I'm going to use my intelligence to support them and also developing your summit, which I imagine is connected. I
Yes.
understand that that summit happened in early March. So I'd
Mhm.
love to hear a little bit about that journey to from publishing to actually running in-person events that can really drive forward support for women and change to help them become published.
Yeah, so just briefly, in that process of bringing clients on and working with them, what I found was that I really liked the training and education piece. And to your question at the very beginning, Julie, about like what made me want to work with all these different types of authors, and a lot of it was born from my like there's just so much to learn and so much out there, good and a lot of bad. And I was
Mhm.
seeing people get really down some bad paths and all this kind of stuff. So I basically, as I started working with authors, I also started doing a lot of training and a lot of let me show you what I did. Don't do this. Don't do that. This is, these don't make these mistakes. And around this time, the online summit, this was back in, the 2012, 2013, 2014 timeframe, the online summit was starting to become a thing. Like everybody was having summits. So I decided that seemed like a great opportunity because I didn't know everything. I didn't know all the routes. I didn't know all the things. So I was like, but there's a whole lot of other people out there that do. So started bringing them together. And I ran 2 conferences that were just kind of, they weren't branded really well. They were kind of all over the place. If you kind of wanted to write anything, a book, a blog, whatever, come on and join us. And then in 2016, I noticed, and 2017 noticed a real lack of representation of diversity, especially women of color and non-whites, but women too, just were not present at all in most of these conferences. So I rebranded, and the 3rd year went with the Women in Publishing Summit. And our whole goal is that we bring forth voices of women and marginalized voices. We honor them, we celebrate them while they get the opportunity to come in front of our audience and teach different things along the writing, publishing, selling, growing a business. We've had people come in and talk about growing podcasts as a way for authors to grow their influence and their experience. And this last one was actually the 5th year branded as the Women in Publishing Summit. And it just continues to grow and flourish because people are very attracted to the same thing that we want to have out in the world, which is, with the rising tide, all ships rise, collaboration, working together, supporting each other, bringing other people in that I know that can help you where you are, that, all those types of things. So it's been amazing. And each year just gets better and better as we really hone our messaging on empower, encourage, support, empower, encourage, support.
It's big stuff, right, Corinna?
Well, it sounds a little familiar in some ways because
Well,
I don't
yeah.
know if you know this, Alexa, but we started this podcast out in the beginning. It was called Femcasters. And
I followed that actually.
I
I
think
did
that's when
know
we
who the
met
Femcasters are. Yes.
back in the old days when we
Back
were
in the old days.
Femcasters.
Yes.
yeah, and I mean, we chose to adapt largely because there were many men in our community that
Mhm.
were hugely supportive, and it felt like every time that we were talking about them was making an excuse. Oh, we have mancasters too,
We like
and
men. I have 4 boys. She has 2 boys. We do like men and
I
boys.
get that. I'm kind of in the same position because we do have men that attend our conference, very,
Mhm.
very few compared to the women. But I mean, I made such a hard line on it being only women who were speakers. And then I opened that up a little bit for
Mhm.
sponsors because there are some really great products and services that I didn't want to leave off the table because they bring such wealth of knowledge. So we started bringing in some men that were sponsors. But I'm in the same place. It's like I want to stay true to our
Mhm.
real mission and passion of making sure that women's voices are heard in a very male dominated industry.
Mhm.
But at the same time, it's like, am I doing a disservice? So we get around it by doing my podcast, which is called the Publish Her podcast, but we invite men on, and in webinars that we do throughout the year that you don't have to be a woman to be the guest on.
Mhm.
So but it's hard when you're like you have a passion for the specific mission of driving something home, but then you're like, am I still serving my full audience by branding that specifically?
yeah. Well, I applaud the effort. I think it's amazing what you're doing, and now I want to go to your summit. So,
Thank you.
I'm so fascinated. You did this. You started this before online summits were really a thing. I mean, with the onset of COVID, it's just a regular everyday thing, but you did this before and you created a community. Like Corinna and I have the community, the media casters. What was the onus? How are you doing it? How are you growing it? And how are you serving these people, these humans, men
Yeah.
and women, maybe some men, but
I was
mostly
I
men?
was well positioned by the fact that I already knew how to do the virtual world, obviously, when COVID kicked off. So that was a big advantage to me. It really helped that we had already, to be honest, so we started with free events. Our first few years were the traditional register for free, and then we would try and upsell tickets to it. And I really disliked that model for a lot of reasons. The first is that while was very effective in building our email list very, very quickly, there's a lot of people who want free, that they signed up because it was free. They don't, and I was putting so much time and energy and effort into it. And so actually I was really surprised by the response of my community when I went to them 2 or 3 years ago and said, I'm thinking about making this a ticketed event. Would you still buy a ticket? And everyone was like, yes. So I was like, okay, I don't know why I had this fear around this. And we still keep it a very reasonable price. But so obviously it's a smaller event now that there's not, 10,000 people registering a year for it, but it's a community of people who are there because they are willing to make the investment. They want to be there, and they're showing up and participating. So growing it, we grow it in a lot of ways. I'll be honest with you, Facebook ads has been a tremendous asset. We pump a lot of money into Facebook ads, but when done correctly, and I hired a strategist. I know how to run Facebook ads. I've run them, but I brought somebody in who was an expert and is still an expert. I just can't afford to pay her all year round because she's wonderful. But wonderful comes with big price tag usually. But anyway, she came in and she set it all up for us. She made sure that we ran and tested audiences and that we had multiple ads and we're testing those ads and doing them. And she set them up so well that we've been able to basically just duplicate those ads and continue to run them each year. Last year was super tricky because of all of the iOS changes and ads got really expensive. But they still, in general, even though it cost more, still converted really, really well and reached audiences that I could have never reached just through my webinars, blogging, even going on podcasts and things like that. So I'm a big fan of the ads platforms as a way really to grow your audience. But also word of mouth. I'm trying to be more visible this year. I focused so much on just doing stuff for my community last year that I was hardly on any other platforms. So this year and next year, I have a big goal of being on more podcasts. And as podcasters, that podcasts are just a wonderful resource for growing, getting it in front of another warm audience. So, trying to make time to do that. And also it's a fun way to connect with people. And it helps me also meet new people that could be really good speakers for the event too. So, we always talk about podcasts, keep that in mind. Podcasts are for authors and business owners and entrepreneurs. They're a massively important tool to get in front of other warm audiences. And I can't tell you the number of entrepreneurs that I have talked to who've said their careers were literally kickstarted by showing up on the right podcast at the right time. So I'm a huge fan of that. I haven't done a lot of this, but I'd really like to be writing more for other outlets and doing things like that. And of course, the obvious one, publishing more books and getting books out there for writers, because obviously my audience is writers. But we get a lot of now that it's growing, and we have a very, like, our fan base, they are ride or dies. They're amazing. And now that, like I said, we honed in on this group of women that we are in for it, so they do a lot of sharing as well. We had one woman who brought in 13 people to the conference with her this year because she was just so enthusiastic and excited about it. She just kept inviting her friends. And I'm like, yes, your friends are my friends. So this is good.
Have you found applications like the Wisdom app or social audio to be of benefit in building your community or in engaging with your audiences?
Can you say those again? Because I've never heard of them, and now I'm going to have to try them.
Alexa, you're
Oh,
coming
hey.
on with us.
The
Okay.
Wisdom
You
app
don't
and the
know. We are
what?
going to become your
So
newest best friends. Social audio. And Corinna and I will be your guide on Clubhouse. It's a lot easier on Clubhouse.
and what I will say is working through something like social audio in Clubhouse or on the Wisdom app, it takes time to build.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
if you have people like Julie or myself there to support, given that we already have connections and then people follow us into a room, then you have kind of a vibrant discussion and you
Yeah.
can engage with people that you otherwise might not reach that may not be spending their time on Facebook because they're committing to social audio in a different way.
And you can actually record everything you do on social
Nice.
audio and use it as a podcast episode. So
I mean,
you're repurposing content, number 1. Number
so smart.
2, just getting in front of different audiences. And I love this topic of authors who should be podcasting. And I
Mhm.
had a room with Nikki Pascarella, who is editor-in-chief of the Media Casters, and she brought on authors And I just saw such a disparity in the ability for authors to speak in public. It was almost painful sometimes to
Mm,
listen to it and to understand that their voices can make an impact. And it's even a great place for you to showcase your authors, to prep them for being on podcasts or public speaking, because
oh,
as an author, you are your brand.
yeah,
And nobody else, even if you're traditionally published, you're your brand.
absolutely.
And if you can't speak, that is a hindrance. So it's a great place for practice. I think it might be an amazing extra tool, even at a conference,
Yes.
upcoming conference. I think it would be really innovative and interesting to kind of teach your authors that.
So I've got 10 years of data now on book launches and what happens with authors and what they're
Mhm,
doing. And you can spend thousands of dollars in marketing tools, in ads, in
mhm,
this, in that, and all the other things. But to your point, like one of the things, especially with like storytelling, first of all, we are transitioned. I wouldn't even say transitioning. We are transitioned to an audio and video world.
mhm,
Like people still read. There's no doubt people are still going to go buying books, but go to buy books, but when it comes to learning about those books or getting invested with those authors, it often comes from connecting with them on a video on where they're
mhm,
hearing them, all those kinds of stuff. So we are I can the data between authors who are getting out there face to face or on video or on a platform where they're being heard
mhm,
and interviewed in their book sales compared to people who just take a step back, not take a step back, but put all their eggs in the digital marketing. There's a great disparity
mhm.
between the two, especially for fiction authors.
Yeah.
But for entrepreneurs as well, because there's so many people publishing books, like
Mhm.
you have to you have to make sure that you're connecting with the right audience in the right way.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I have to say, I really do love interviewing authors. And so finding podcasters that like to interview authors, I think is also helpful. And
Yes.
I think it takes some time to figure out where they live and breathe because
Yes.
you have to listen to the shows and then decide, oh, okay, is this a show I want to be on? Or is the audience going to be one that will act on our
Mhm.
conversation? How can I better get my message out there into the world? And
Yep.
so, just writing the book is step 1, right?
Exactly.
That's the
And
easy part. That's the
that's
easy
the easy
part.
part, and
Mhm.
that's the part that's so frustrating to people because they think they make it through the editing part, and they're like, "Phew, the hard work is done," and I'm like, "Oh, honey, we have just begun."
It's
Uh, and
only
I've
just
heard
begun.
There you go, Karen.
wait,
Right?
Karen
Karina, sing that
Carpenter.
again.
No, we've only just begun. Isn't that how it goes? I think that's the tune.
To live. Oh, that's too high for me. I can't sing
But
that
Oh, I'm
I
an
love
alto. I go low.
we've
right
got
now.
some good things. We've got some good things ahead, but it is so true. The easy part is writing the book. The challenge is keeping it alive. And I think that's where I am so passionate about not only helping authors or showcasing authors, but people like you who understand and are giving them the tools and giving them that wake up call. That scary wake up call. And you're the one telling them, no, you guys, you got to do it differently. And it's always about thinking differently and outside of the box.
Well, it's really interesting because when I came into the publishing world, I mean, a huge self-publishing is not new. It's been around since the 90s, maybe even the 80s. I'm not even sure the whole timeline there. But it was with the invention of the Kindle in like
Oh,
2000, when the Kindle came out in
yeah.
2011, that self-publishing just like really exploded. And that's when I was coming into this world. So a lot of new technology, a lot of changes, a lot of opportunities, a lot of things are out there, but also a lot of people who are preaching the message that, okay, we can self-publish so we can disrupt this old industry and do it our own way. And to a degree, there are certain groups who can do that really well. Entrepreneurs who already have an audience, or business owners who have an audience. If you two were to go co-publish a book and put it out there, you already have, or if unless you've already done that, so you already have an audience that you
We're
can
in editing.
woo,
A
good job,
lot of
ladies.
editing,
The
Alexa.
editing is a nightmare. No. Oh my gosh, I wish. I'm still editing my book, and I'm at that phase now where I'm like, "Will it ever be done?" So I hear you. But, when you have an audience, like, you can short circuit a lot of those and take those shortcuts, but, um, for many, many authors, like, there is a reason why the traditional model works and is so, like, works the way it does. So the longer I'm in the industry, the more I pull back and say, take your time, do the things right, make sure you've done all of these things and in this order. Don't rush. If you don't have anybody to sell the book to, you've got to take the time to build that audience, because there's just so many things. And I'm sure you don't mind interviewing authors whose book has been published for a while, but it's so much more exciting when you've got somebody it's a new story, it's new news. You're not competing against something that's old and out of date. So yeah, I forget what question you asked me now, but yes, there's a whole lot of like reasons for doing things in a certain timeline, in a certain order. And a lot of people, I think where I was going with that is, a lot of people don't know that, because the messaging that they're hearing loudly is, write your book in a weekend and publish it in 20 days and be a bestseller. And I'm like,
Clickbait.
no, no.
Oh, man. You're gonna get me all hot and bothered, Alexa. I hate those kind of people. They're selling you the dream. They're
They're
preying
selling you
upon
the
your
dream.
insecurities, and
Right.
Amazon is about to serve her some X-rated stuff because she just said hot and bothered and Alexa in the same sentence.
all right. Dang it.
Oh boy.
Wait, I'm gonna check my, Amazon feed after we get
The
off, and I bet
recommendations are gonna be stellar.
yeah,
That's what
this
I'm
is
just
gonna be
saying.
good.
Oh my gosh.
The possibilities are endless. How do you traditionally publish? Do you traditionally publish, or do you self-publish, hybrid publishing? What are you doing?
So it's kind of, I am a publisher, so I guess I'm
Mhm.
traditionally publishing all of my own books, but
Oh,
which
nice.
some people would consider to be self-publishing, but it's
Mhm.
not, because I have a whole company behind it. But my companies are hybrid publishers, so I guess I'm a self-hybrid traditional. There you go.
So, that's a very vague answer, wouldn't you say, Corinna Bellizzi?
I mean, I think she talked around it. I'm still not clear.
All right, so I will tell you this. I am publishing my first books through my own company because I am afraid of the traditional process. Also, I don't have the chops yet. Like, I'm not as most writers, when they come in as a brand new writer, like, it takes time and a lot of development. I was reading on the other day about some of the biggest name authors and how long it took them for their first book, and you're talking 6, 8, 10, 12 years a lot of times before they got that right book that was ready for the agenting and traditional process. So I am publishing some books right now to get experience writing, to build my platform, to do some of those things. But I'll be honest, when I write the book, which I have in my head, but I need to become a better writer before I can write it, I'm going to go the traditional route. There's just, for fiction authors in particular, there's just so many things that the big five offer, and even some of the bigger indie publishing houses, they just offer things that's harder from the self-publishing point of view.
Yeah, and yet they still expect you to be out there full front and center a lot. Like, your media tour can be very intense.
It
You're the
can
one out
be.
there doing it.
Absolutely. You still
Mhm.
have to build your own platform, certainly, and you still have to be willing to do a lot of it. But I tell you what, there's something nice though about having a publicist who does all the back end work of placing things and getting things out there and organizing things. And then you show up and read from your book and do these. I'll happily travel the country if someone else is getting that organized for me. And I know it's changed a lot too, but there are still the big publishing houses still do big tours, but those are so few and hard to come by. So, and that's the other dream, we talked about selling the dream. Like, the dream has really changed. I know plenty of self-published romance, and YA and Regency and across the board with fiction, who are making 10 to 50 grand a month on Amazon as self-published authors. But it wasn't their first book or their second or third or fourth. Most of them, it was 8 to 10 to 15, 17 books, and a whole lot of energy and effort building the system, building the audience, doing the thing. And now their work is paying off.
Mhm. That's a really great point. I have a good friend who's gone from traditional publishing to self-publishing. She has a series of novels called the Edie Spence. How does she refer to it? It's like science fiction romance kind of.
Paranormal romance?
That's it. See, you got
Mhm.
it. Mhm.
Read
Paranormal.
your
Yeah.
mind. I must have heard
Yes,
this story before.
I think you did. Yes. And
Mhm.
so she, at any rate, she does have a lot of fun in the world of writing, and she's now writing erotica as well, but she got her rights back so that she could self-publish the
Yeah.
Edie Spence series in
Yeah.
addition. And it's just having fun
Yeah.
working on different projects. Some of them are co-authored with another author, and then they're having fun writing a whole series. So it's just a lot of work on her part, but also
Mhm.
to be at the point where you have, a 5-novel series in
Yeah.
addition to all of these other works, and then turning it into kind of a little bit more of a moneymaker there as well. I mean, she has a following on Twitter and everything else.
Absolutely. Once you have that fan base, it makes a lot of sense to take out the middleman.
Mhm. Yeah.
Uh,
Or middle woman,
or middle woman.
right, Alexa
Yes,
Bigwarfe? And
that's right.
how did we get so lucky to have Alexa Bigwarfe here? Everything you want to know about her and all that she's doing with her summit, write, publish, sell as well. You'll get that info in our show notes. But Corinna, shall we ask Alexa to do the deed?
Uh-oh.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
my Alexa just said, "Sorry, I don't know what you're talking about."
I don't do the deed.
So we ask all of our guests to say 2 words before we sign off, and that's
Okay.
simply kick it.
Kick it. Did I do the deed well enough there? I don't know. Do we
Um
need to redo the deed? Kick it.
Thanks for listening to another episode of The Media Casters. You can keep this conversation going and kick it with Corinna and Jules in live office hours each week. Visit themediacasters.mn.co to sign up. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe whenever you listen. Let's kick it.